I'm Phil Simms, and you're watching WCTV, all volunteer community television from the Township of Washington.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of WCTV's Town Talk. Tonight we have a very, very special guest who's come to WCTV. This happens rarely for us here, and we're so excited to have former heavyweight boxer Chuck Wepner sitting right across the table from me. His lawyer, Ken Pollard, who's a Washington Township lawyer, and my partner, John Francola. For 20 years, we've covered sports. And tonight we're going to talk to Chuck about boxing and what he's doing now, and just go back and have a quick review of his life. And Chuck, before we go on any further, for WCTV, John, the entire gang here, all the volunteers at WCTV, we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come here and talk to us.
No problem. It's an honor, and Ken told me that if I didn't show up, he was going to rebuild me for the work he did.
And Ken, I want to again thank you, because I think it was maybe a year ago or 10 months ago in a council meeting, you called me over and said, you know, I know Chuck Wepner, and I said, yeah, okay, fine. So would you like to have him on the show? And I said, yes. And you said, well, I'll get him for you. And tonight, the gentleman is here in the flesh.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And John, we've done a lot of interviews over the years, football players, basketball players, baseball players, but never a boxer, professional boxer. Be good now, John.
This individual, he was a hero from when I watched that 1975. You know, Cliffside Park. Then I had a family and all, watching you box, and I was rooting like crazy and I felt you were going to beat Ali in that fight. Then I don't know what happened right at the end, but you'll be telling us about that as we get into this.
You're from Cliffside Park. You must have been a Randy Newman fan.
Absolutely.
Right?
Randy's now referee.
3 times. Yes, Randy's a very dear friend of mine, and he's a hell of a fighter. We had 3 real good fights, and I've been to a couple of dinners with Randy, and he's a real gentleman and a credit to the sport.
Let's go back a little bit. Let's start from the beginning. How did you get into boxing?
Well, I actually boxed with the PAL when I was a little guy. You know, we used to have smokers. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I lived on 28th Street, and the PAL was on 23rd. So I used to go down to the PAL, and they'd put the big gloves on us, and we'd punch it out. Nobody would get hurt, and there were no wins, but there were draws. I had 6 fights as a kid, and then I more or less started playing a lot of basketball. And I started boxing again when I joined the Marine Corps. I was 17 years old, and I wound up winning the MABS, which was the Military Air Base Championship down in Cherry Point, North Carolina.
And then when you came out of the Marine Corps, when did you turn professional?
Well, actually, I came out of the Corps in 1959, and I bounced around for a little bit. I was a bouncer in a couple of clubs. And a guy named Joe Barisi came to Bayonne PAL one day. I was working at a go-go joint, the one and only go-go joint in Bayonne. And he said to me, I understand that, you know, you're a pretty tough guy in the street. You go with your hands, you know, why don't you come down and try out for the PAL boxing team? We're entering a team in the New York Golden Gloves in New York City. And I said, I'll have to think about it. You know, I don't know if I want to train. Anyway, I went down there, I trained, and I wound up winning the heavyweight, the New York and National Heavyweight Championship in 1964. To this day, I'm still the only man from the state of New Jersey to ever win the New York and Nationals. And
then you professional. Who was your first fight?
A guy named Lightning George Cooper.
And how long did Lightning George last with the
he wasn't that fast, actually. I chased him around a little bit. I knocked him out in the 3rd round. He only had 4 fights himself. He was 2-2. And, you know, that's the trick when you're starting your career, to get you involved in the game against guys that, you know, that maybe you have a good chance of beating. You know, they don't want to throw you in with a top-ranked guy right off the bat. As it was, I fought Sonny Liston in my 12th pro fight, and I won a blues, as my first loss.
And how Sonny Liston, was he the toughest man you fought?
He was the hardest hitter I ever fought.
Really?
Yeah. I'd say the best all-around fighter was probably Ali, but the hardest hitter, I went 10 rounds with Liston, and he broke my nose, my left cheekbone, and gave me 72 stitches. So he busted me up pretty good. As a matter of fact, in the 9th round, the referee, Barney Felix, came in and said, Chuck, we're going to stop the fight at the end of the 9th round. He's because you're all busted up. And I said, come on, Barney, I'm all right. You know, I can go another round. And he said, well, how many fingers do I have up? And my manager had his hand on my shoulder. He tapped me 3 times. I couldn't see his hand. And I said 3. And he said, oh, you can see. Come on out. And I went out, and about a minute and 2 seconds into the 10th round, I threw a left hook and hit the referee, Barney Felix. I hit him in the side of the neck and the shoulder, and Jersey Joe Walcott was the commissioner. He jumped up and waved off the fight because he realized then that I couldn't see. I couldn't see really from about maybe the end of the 7th round on. You know, both my eyes were pretty well banged up.
Is that because the eyes, was that something that was heredity, or did it happen because of too many fights that you would bleed like that?
No, that happened because I didn't learn to duck good enough. You know, I used to block a lot of punches in them days. Unfortunately, it was with my face. My manager used to say to me, geez, come on, Chuck, just show me you can slip 1 punch. And I'd go out and I'd slip the first one, they'd miss me, and then he'd hit me with 20 or 30 more. You know, and I'd say to Al, see, I slipped 1. I don't want to get you too happy.
My father was, rest his soul, was a great boxing fan. He loved baseball and boxing. Those was his 2 loves, and I don't think baseball was first. I always thought boxing was first, and he always talked to me about boxing. How difficult it is to train for a fight? What's the physical rigors on you psychologically and physically?
Well, for me, it was a little different. I was never subsidized. So some guys do nothing but train. So they can get up in the morning, do their road work, train all day. I used to wake up in the morning like 6:30. I'd throw some clothes on, go down the park, do my 3.5 miles, come back, shower, go to work all day. And then at night, I'd go to the gym and train. And by the time I got home, it was 9 or 9:30. And it was tough to really get in tip-top shape. Plus, I never had a full-time trainer because of the way I trained. You know, when I trained at night, a lot of the trainers were there during the day, and the only guy I had really training me most of the time was the guy who ran the gym, you know, whoever was around. And but for the title fight, my manager, Al Braverman, hooked me up with Don King as the promoter. Don had just gotten out of prison and had become Muhammad Ali's promoter. And him and Al know each other from Las Vegas like 20 years before. And he paid me to go away to camp. I trained 7 weeks. I got myself into great shape, and the rest is history. I fought a very good fight.
And you also sparred with Joe Frazier, Ali Frazier, the great fights. How was Joe Frazier as a boxer?
Joe was tough. I was up in Grossinger's with Joe on 2 different occasions, but the one occasion I was there for almost 2.5 weeks, and we sparred over 70 rounds together, and Joe had a great left hook. Great left hook. As a matter of fact, the first time I boxed with him up in the gym, I came out and I was throwing a lot of jabs, but I was keeping my right hand tucked in. I wasn't throwing the right. I come back at the end of the first round, and Al said to me, Chuck, throw that right hand. You got a big right hand. Throw it. I said, I don't know about throwing the right hand with Frazier, because Frazier had this double left hook. He was with the body and the head. So I'll just throw it. Don't worry about nothing. I went back for the second round. I threw bing right in the kidney, right in the face about 3 times. I come back at the end of the second round. I had a bloody nose. Al says, keep that right hand tucked in. You don't bother throwing the right hand. And I thanks now you tell me. After I was out there getting battered for a round. But I went 3 rounds every day with him. And Joe, it wound up, we went almost 70 rounds together in the 3 weeks. And Joe and I became very good friends. He was a great fighter, Joe Frazier.
Yeah, but Joe Frazier, I know, looking at some of the fights, he was always going straight forward. He never knew how to back up. So between you and him,
that was it. There was like two
bulls.
2 Mack trucks running into each other. I only had one direction, unfortunately, and that was forward. And so I took a lot more punishment than I should have. I probably could have learned to be a pretty good boxer if I listened to people. But like I said, I never had a full-time trainer. At night, when I went there at like 6:30 or 7 at night until like 9 o'clock, most of the trainers were gone. They were home in bed already because they were old-timers. And the only guy around really was the guy who ran the gym or some of the leftovers or guys who weren't great trainers.
Now we get to the fight with Ali. And who did you fight before Ali? You remember the fight?
Yeah, a guy named Terrible Terry Hinkey. Don King had gotten, like I say, gotten out of prison, and he became Muhammad Ali's promoter. And Ali was going to fight George Foreman, his first fight out of the 4-year layoff. They took 4 years off him because of his, because of his belief. He would have been the most loved fighter of all time if he hadn't did that, refused induction into the service, and they got him in a lot of trouble. Anyway, Don King said to me, you're ranked 7th in the world. We want you to fight for the title. You're going to fight George Foreman because Foreman's fighting Muhammad Ali. And even though I'm Ali's promoter, I don't think Ali can beat Foreman. So he also had George Foreman beside Ali. Don King had them all wrapped up. And I thought I was going to be fighting George Foreman. And I went out to Salt Lake City, Utah, and I fought a guy named Terrible Terry Hinkey, who was, I think, 32-4. And I knocked him out in the 11th round. I was the North American champion then. Heavyweight champion. Knocked him out in the 11th round. I had him down 7 times. And Bob Hope was the MC that night. It was a benefit for Biafra, if you guys didn't remember
Biafra,
that.
sure, yeah.
$2 from every ticket went to the Biafra Fund.
Right.
And they had about 14,000 people in the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it turned out to be a great fight. As a matter of fact, Don King said in a news article afterwards that was one of the greatest heavyweight fights he ever saw. And Bob Hope came in my dressing room, and I was laying on the table being stitched up. My usual 20 or 30 stitches. I used to get that on a Friday night going out with the guys. But anyway, he grabbed my hand like this, and he said, "Chuck, it's Bob Hope, and I reached out, "Hey, Mr. Hope, how are you? Chuck, I just want you to know, one of the greatest heavyweight fights I ever saw. This guy, Hinkey, could punch." And I had him down 7 times. He kept getting up. Finally, the 7th time, he didn't get up. And I got my shot at the title. 2.5 weeks later, Ali fights Foreman in Zaire, and everybody figures Foreman's going to walk right through him because Foreman was invincible, right? Ali knocks out George Foreman, and he becomes the heavyweight champion of the world.
Were you surprised at that fight?
To be honest with you,
Yeah.
I thought George Foreman was just too big and too strong for Ali, especially since Ali had just had 4 years off, and he was, he really wasn't in the best condition, fight-wise. But anyway, the fight went through, and he promised me a shot at the title. And 3 months and a day later, I was sitting at home watching Kojak, and my mother called. I love Telly, so a dear friend of mine, by the way, when he was alive. And the phone rings. I said, "Oh, Jesus, 10 minutes into Kojak." I usually don't even answer the phone. But it was the voicemail. It was my mother. "Jack, pick up the phone. Jack, pick up the phone." Pick up the Mom, what? I mean, I love my mother. My mother raised us. I didn't meet my father until I fought for the Golden Gloves. The first time I ever met him, I was 25. Anyway, make a long story short, she says to me, "Did you get the news tonight? Did you see the news?" I said, "No, Mom, what is it?" I said, "I'm watching Kojak. I tell you, never bother me during Kojak." He used to be on at 11 o'clock and 11:30. Anyway, she says, "The whole back page of the news, somebody called me. Ali to defend against Wepner." It wound up that Ali was out in Cleveland with Don King, and Don King had talked to him about the fight, and Ali agreed to it, and they broke it on UPAP, and it hit all the papers, and I wound up getting a shot at the title, and I wound up, being, more well-known. I went 15 rounds, and I got to meet Ken Poller. That's the only way.
That's a big part of the fight.
Oh, well, listen, you walk into his office, if you ain't somebody, you're nobody. He said to me, by the way, I know the mayor personally.
Of Washington Township?
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing he said to me. I said, "Well, gee, that's big."
So that fight was fought in England? You fought that fight with Ali? Was it in England?
No, that was in Richfield, Ohio.
Ohio?
Richfield, Ohio. And I trained up in the Granite Hotel up in the Jewish Alps, they called it in them days, and the Granite Hotel. And it was great because that was the first time I ever trained full-time. And, I was like the man up there, when I got there, they had signs all over, Granite Hotel welcomes heavyweight contender Chuck Wepner, good luck, Chuck. And, I had my sparring partners up there with me. I did my road work in the morning. I trained in the afternoon. I ate when I wanted to. I ate what I wanted to. And it was probably the greatest 7 weeks of my life, except for those 2 days when I married my wife.
That's important
Linda.
to say that. You know that. And she's here.
She's here too.
And she's here.
She's
Oh,
here.
I tell you, honey, we practiced that about for an hour before I came. Did I do good, honey?
I think you did a great job with that.
We'll just touch on his fight, then we'll move on a little bit what's going on today. You dropped Ali in the second round.
No, I dropped him in the ninth round.
Ninth round, you hit him with what, left hook?
I hit him with a right hand under the heart. It wasn't a great punch. He was pulling away from a jab, and he was off balance. I caught him right under the heart. And as a matter of fact, I went back to the corner, and I said to my manager, Al Braidman, Al, start the car. We're going to the bank. We're millionaires. And Al says, if I were you, I would turn around because he's getting up and he looks pissed off. I thought, uh-oh. But I always had a lot of confidence, and I never went into a fight. I didn't care who it was. I honestly thought that maybe Ali would look past me a little bit, and I would, I'd have a shot at knocking him out in the late rounds.
Wow.
I even bought my wife a powder blue negligee.
Oh, really?
The night before the title fight, and I gave it to her, and I said, honey, tonight I want you to wear this negligee to bed because tonight you're going to be sleeping with the heavyweight champion of the world.
You see, Chuck, there's your
wife's on. We got your wife on TV now. Yeah.
In the meantime, anyway, after the fight, I came back to the hotel. I walked in the bedroom. She's sitting on the bed in the negligee. She says to me, am I going to Ali's room or is he coming to mine? That was very funny.
Do you keep in touch with Ali after the fight?
I did up until a couple of years ago. We were out to Bering Springs to see him, and it's so terrible the way he looks and the condition that he's in, and it's heartbreaking, really.
So you finished boxing, and now you're doing something completely different with your life.
Well, not really. When I was boxing, I worked for a company, Allied Liquors, which was Majestic Liquors then. I've been selling liquor now for over 38 years, and it's a very good living. That's another thing. I never gave up my job. Like I said, I was never subsidized, so I couldn't afford to give up my job because I had, family and bills and everything else. So I always worked and trained. I was like just a part-time fighter, except for the one time when I fought Ali. And like I said, I was lucky that night because a guy named Sylvester Stallone saw the fight. He was in Philadelphia down to his last $40, and he went to a closed circuit showing of the fight, and he got the inspiration, went home and knocked out the script in 3.5 days. And 30 years went by, and things worked out good for me. The publicity was great, and after 30 years, my wife and a friend talked me into more or less suing Stallone. Going after him because he made me a lot of promises and nothing ever came of it. And I wound up getting a lawyer named Tony Mango and, of course, Ken Poller and the great litigator. And I said to Tony, he's Ken Poller. What does he do? He said, he's one of the greatest litigators you ever saw. He's also a great bullshit artist. I said, oh, well, I guess that goes hand in hand when you're a lawyer, right? He said, yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, make a long story short, I got to meet Ken, and they did a great job. Ken and Tony went out there and they just tore up Stallone at the out there in California, and they made a fool of him, and they more or less set him where Stallone walked in and thought he was on the offense. By the time he left, he was on the defense, and a few months later, the lawyer said, let's get together and resolve this thing, and it worked out good for me because it went along with the movie that they're doing about me for Tolan Robbins and Miramax and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and
who's playing Chuck Wepner now?
Well,
Chuck Wepner?
They've got a couple of guys in mind, and I'm not right now at liberty to say who, but they're legitimate big-time actors, and you have to realize that the guy that they're getting has to be Chuck Wepner when he was 36 years old when I fought for the title.
Right.
By the way, I was the second oldest man ever to fight for the title. At that time, Jersey Joe Walker was 39. So I got my shot late, but like I say, I went away to camp, and I did pretty good. And it's 30 years later, I'm on this show big time.
Here you are.
I wouldn't have been here.
You're sitting with us. You
I
really,
mean-
you really.
This is probably the longest anybody's talked with the mayor holding a microphone. I haven't been able to say
He
anything.
will be ready.
But you know, I know he'd be ready.
He's in the
He-
bullpen
He's sitting there.
right
He's
now.
thinking. He's thinking.
He come over and he brought an article. I mean, you know what? I consider that an honor.
Mr. Mayor, would you have anything you'd like to say to Chuck Wepner?
Well, as I mentioned when I first came here, I've known about him since about 1973 because of a fellow that was now not Bayonne anymore.
Right, he moved out.
Wepner, but he and I worked together at a defunct company called American Can Company, and he was a great baseball player at Seton Hall. And he said, "You ever hear about this guy, Chuck Wepner?" I said, he says, "He's the Bayonne bleeder." And I said, "Well, you know, who's he? He's a fighter. You know, you hear a lot about him. This is, I think, before the big fight, if I remember correctly.
73, I fought him in 75. Yep,
75.
before.
So I watched it, and when the day came for the heavyweight championship, Frank and I used to talk because several times a month we drive together in carpooling. Remember the first energy crisis when gas went from 39 cents a gallon to 65 cents a gallon? Those days are long gone, but that was an energy crisis, and you could only go 55 miles an hour, if I remember. But I heard a lot about him, and I followed it along the way. In fact, I think about 3 weeks ago, the papers had another article about Chuck where they brought up his career, what he's doing now, and the fact that he's still in good shape. And on a Friday night, he probably could still hold court in Bayonne or any town in New Jersey and still give a very, very good account of himself. And I think I detected in part of that article, because since I do a little bit of weightlifting myself, is that he still can bench press 280 pounds.
No.
Is that the correct quote, or
Oh,
not? I
well.
don't know.
No more. I used to be able to do 305 to it. Now I don't touch more than 175, 180.
Oh,
180.
okay. All right. So I
more
misread
reps.
it. But
me.
it is a great honor that you have come to Washington Township up here, and that you also have one of the probably great lawyers in the state of New Jersey who we started as adversaries, but we didn't fight in the ring. We used to joust with words back about 30 years ago. But he has done a good job, and he's represented you well. And I think you've got what you really should have gotten out of everything. And I know no details other than to say what a great account you gave, and what a great way of holding up the state of New Jersey and its amateur athletes over the years that have gotten a shot here and there. So, Chuck, one thing I am going to tell you a little bit about is back in my United States Marine Corps football career, when I was 23 or 24, and you were about the same age, we used to go out to practice in September, and this is at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, not that far from Cherry Point. And there was a guy on a Marine Corps boxing team, because in those days, each base had a boxing team, which I presume that was what you were on when you were at the air station. And there was another guy that fought for the heavyweight championship working out there. He was light heavyweight in Marine Corps, Ken Norton.
Yeah, hell of a fight. Became heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah, and he was there, and we used to come off the field and watch him, and you could see his potential even in those days. And it's too bad the military doesn't continue the base competition that they used to have in the heyday, where you learned your skills, Norton learned his skills, and a lot of amateur baseball and football players had an opportunity to get to the pros. So other than that, what do you plan on doing over the next 10 years? You got any good plans in mind?
Well, if things go the way I hope, and the movie comes out, and we do well, I'd like to maybe retire someday. I actually like my job. Been doing it 38 years. My wife would have us retire tomorrow. My wife likes to buy things and likes to travel and likes.
You got to work.
Yeah, Well, my wife works for me now. She's a salesman also. She's a very good one, by the way, too. But I think eventually I'd like to maybe get out of the business and just retire and just go around, do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I guess that's everybody's dream.
Now, Ken, we're sitting here very quietly. We know what kind of a lawyer you are. You're a great lawyer. You represent the town. You represent the Chuck. The mayor talks how great you are. Are you involved in sport in any way? You like sports and you like?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Paramus, participated in sports, played a little baseball there, and then in college, nothing, on the leagues, but all the intramural sports, things like that. Now, golf. I play a lot of golf now. That's my sport that I like the best. But I watch baseball and football, boxing I love. And
You like boxing?
Sure, yeah.
My father and my brother sitting over here was a big boxing fan. And we'd say to him, now he was born 1910, so he was in the heyday of boxing, 1930s, when boxing reigned supreme.
40s, they were the greatest, yeah, they're awesome.
And he saw Ali fought. He saw Ali. He saw Marciano fight. He saw the great ones fight. My uncle was a boxing inspector for New York State. And I asked my dad one time, I said, Dad, who was the greatest fighter you ever saw? Who's the greatest fighter Chuck Wepner ever saw? Other than Chuck Wepner.
I never consider myself the greatest. I was just a tough guy. I could take a good punch. My forte was my condition.
Mm-hmm.
I used to wear guys down. I was, papers used to call me an intimidator. I'd wear guys down after 3 or 4 or 5 rounds. I'd catch up. You had to be in good shape to fight me because I was always, I didn't have a lot of talent, but I had a great condition. That's what I used to win on. But I think the greatest all-around fight I ever saw in his heyday, Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali.
It'd be the first 25 fights before they took the 4 years off. He was 25-0, I believe, with 22 knockouts. Is that right, honey? My wife actually knows more about. As a matter of fact, the night that I fought Ali, she was sitting in the living room watching it. The whole family was cheering for Muhammad Ali. Of course, that was before she knew me. And the only one cheering for me was her brother-in-law, Nicky. And, I got to meet Linda after I fought for the title. And we dated for a while, and then I didn't see her for 16 years. And then I ran into her again through a friend of mine, and by that time I had slowed down a little bit, as far as wanting to party and wanting to be a big shot and everything. It goes with the territory, when you hold titles and everything else, it just, a lot of times it goes to your head maybe too much. Anyway, we wound up getting married, and Linda and I are married now over 13 years.
My father, we were talking about who he said, and I'm sure you'll know the fighter. He always said the best fighter he ever saw was Willie Pep.
Oh, Willie Pep was great. Willie was a very dear friend of mine, and matter of fact, I used to book him and a lot of the old timers to different things. Matter of fact, we were just up the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I'm in the International Boxing. I'm in about 4 Hall of Fame, but this one's up in Canastota. That's the big one. And Willie was supposed to be there in November, and he didn't show up because he was sick. He wound up dying a few weeks later.
Wouldn't it be great if you can come in this time frame right about now with these heavyweight that we don't even know who they are? Imagine that with the paycheck. Ken would be able to just count your money. He won't even care at that point.
Well, maybe he can still do that. I'm sure Ken's hoping that the movie goes well, and if the movie, Redemption, 11 Times the Real Rocky, if the movie goes well, I'm quite sure that Ken could still do that. Because,
I'm sure he can. The last question I'm going to ask you, and I'll let you go because I know it's a long day. You're talking here, you were talking before the show went on, and you talked about, I saw this fighter, and you saw Larry Holmes, and there's a camaraderie with boxers. You fight in the ring, you really go after each other, you try to knock each other out.
Yes.
But when the fight is over, there is that respect, camaraderie you have.
Definitely. Well, you know what it is? I think more than anything else, it's a one-on-one sport. It's, football, basketball, baseball, they're all great sports. I watch them all, I love them. But it's in baseball, there's 8 other guys beside you. In football, there's 10 other guys beside you. In basketball, 4 other guys. In the ring and in boxing, it's just you. You're in there by yourself, and you know how tough it is to get yourself in great shape. And I don't say that we're any better athletes than any of those sports, because they're all great athletes. But I do say that it's a one-on-one sport, and that's why there's so much respect there.
John?
Well, the stamina, the stamina to box. Being in there and people hitting you and the kidneys and all that, and at a point you can't even move with the arms. It's
yeah, it slows you down. I was lucky in 147 fights, amateur and pro. I was never knocked out. I was only down one time with Ali in the 15th round from exhaustion, and I got up. But I could always take a great punch. But that doesn't always win for you. You have to have tremendous skill too, and it goes for that for any sport.
Did you see the 7-foot Russian That was a joke.
I saw replays. Yeah,
I mean, can you imagine?
Well-
this big guy comes out there, boom, boom. They don't move, and then you have a guy who's about 10 inches shorter, beats him up. I mean,
yeah,
come on.
Yeah, well, the guy made some money, and I'm sure he'll go back to
Millions,
Russia
probably.
or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure he did make millions. Then he'll go
Millions.
back, and he'll be a rich man. Good for him.
Mr. Mayor, final word before we let Mr. Wepner go?
Just a thought, boxing has been a sport, goes all the way back to some of those films of Jack Johnson, going back to turn of the century. And but notice on TV this rising coming combination of martial arts and boxing, where this has created tremendous spectator on the cable channels. And Chuck, I just thought if you have a comment about some of these guys and the way
Well,
they
I'm
fight
also
versus
a,
traditional boxing.
I'm also a black belt in Ishiru karate and jiu-jitsu. I studied the arts for about 5 years. Matter of fact, my senseis, I have two senseis, Ralph Passero and Vincent Marchetti. One's a 9th degree and the other one's a 10th degree, red belt and black belt. And it's martial arts, martial arts, martial arts. You know, karate is a lot like boxing. It's the snapping of punches and everything, you know, and it goes hand in hand.
Well, I think the time is just about up, and Chuck, I want to thank you for coming and spending some time for here. Not only a great ambassador for boxing, you're a great ambassador for New Jersey and this
Thank you,
country.
fellas.
Thank you very much. You did a great job.
10
Thank you.
days.
We're going to stay,
Thank you.
and continue talking, maybe we'll do it again. Ken, I want to thank you so very much for bringing Chuck up here. It's a great privilege and honor for us to interview him and talk to him. And you're right, he has a lot of stories. I
Lots
guess
of stories.
we could stay here till 12 o'clock and he'll
Absolutely.
give us
Write
stories.
some
Absolutely.
books. You
Yep.
should be writing some books.
You write a book.
Why not
They
write
wrote a book. Excuse me, it's called Behind His Face.
I just wanted to say that I was happy that everything turned out for Chuck in that lawsuit, because it was a correction of a wrong that was done 30 years ago. When that case started, and the other lawyer and I were talking, he came to me with this proposition of this possible case, and I said to the other lawyer, I said, well, this is an interesting case since it happened 30 years ago. We're going to have some difficulties with this, statute of limitations, things like that. But it really was a wrong that happened, and meeting Chuck and getting to know him, not only as a lawyer did it give me a lot of gratification, but personally it made me feel good to redress that grievance, and I was happy that we got that accomplished.
Sure, and somebody who still goes to work after all these years, fighting for the championship, is a special person, and you look to help that person as much as possible. Again, the movie will be out in how long from now? About a year?
Yeah,
or two?
we're hoping out by the end of the year. They have to place by the end of the beginning of next year. They got to put it in the right time slot. You don't want to put out a movie the same week or so that De Niro and Pacino are making a movie. You want to wait till Joe Schmo and somebody else is in a movie. You know, this way you got a better shot of being number one. That's very important, to be number one your first week.
Well,
or
your
so.
movie come out at the same time our movie's coming out, because nobody. Yeah, they're making a movie, Frank Cole and the Fury. Yeah, so you'll be number one of the box. I can
All right,
guarantee you.
good.
Thank you very much. I want to again thank Chuck Wepner, Ken Pollard, John Francola, the Mayor of Washington Township, Rudy Wenzel, our photographer Rich Cosell, and the gang here at WCTV, all the volunteers. We hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you, and keep watching WCTV. Good night, everybody.